Jesus and Tim in Las Vegas. Tim is once again out in the world, in another country, in one of his tract distribution. He's going to be giving out thousands of gospel messages in the language of that country, and he is absolutely fearless. It doesn't matter if it's a cathedral or a mosque or a temple. He will go right where he can go, where the crowds are. And there he gives the living gospel, the gospel of eternal life. If you're not a supporter of Tim Barron's Jesus and Tim in Las Vegas, you need to go to his website and join up and get his newsletter. You need to be involved. A gentleman in Canada, a farmer, living in a community of 200-300 people, felt that God had called him to see that thousands of tracts could be distributed. And he said, Lord, how can I do that when I'm a wheat farmer? Well, he's doing that by giving the money to supply 10,000 tracts a month for Tim to hand out. And folks, if you don't know it, Tim has personally given out over 1 million tracts all over the world. Now, this is Dr. Bob Morey, and I'm sitting in for Tim. We have a special guest with us today. Hey, Dan, how you doing?
Great. Lovely to hear your voice.
Hey, great to hear you. It's been how many years?
Well, I think we've done a few stories together. You know, I run the Assist News Service, and I believe you were one of the first, if not the first, to identify Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, I was actually, according to Warren Duffy and the FBI in Santa Ana, California, they came to visit me, and they said, what information do you have? And I gave them the information. They said, we didn't know. And that's because at that time, the CIA did not share information with the FBI and vice versa. But the book Islamic Invasion, which was written before 9/11, I've been amazed in the Republican debates that even one of the candidates said, what we're facing is an Islamic invasion. I said, maybe he read my book. Well, listen, as you look today, and I look upon you, Dan, first, could you give some contact information? Because the people who listen to this program, they should contact you and your news service to know what's happening. Just introduce yourself.
For the Assist News Service, the website is assist, A-S-S-I-S-T, news, one word, .net. And we're an international news service that goes all over the world. We mainly supply media with stories about the persecution of Christians. I know this is a topic very close to your heart, but I worked for many years in the British media. I worked for some of the worst tabloids, the Sunday People, the Sunday Mirror, and even worked for the National Enquirer for a while.
Well, that's
and
good.
I came back to the Lord and started using the skills God had given me to serve Him rather than to serve the world.
Well, as you put and I would welcome you to the tribe of Ahithophel. If you remember when Jerusalem celebrated its 3,000th birthday, there was to be a parade, and I was invited to march under the banner of the tribe of Ahithophel. I'm Messianic Jew. You probably didn't know that.
Right.
My mother's Ashkenazi Sephardic from Rome, Italy. But anyway, I was about to go when the FBI told me the Hamas had put me on a death list, and I could not fly even to Israel.
Oh, dear.
There was an assassination threat. They had tried once in San Diego to kill me. FBI saved my bacon. Yeah. So I had to give up that trip. And since then, I've been told I may not go to Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Indonesia, etc. I would be arrested in the airport. Yeah, so much for any freedom. But as you look around the persecuted church, I mean, to see Christians having their heads chopped off, and President Hussein Obama shipping Christians out of the United States, Syrian, etc., and the head I guess you know the head of the immigration is a Muslim woman. I've seen her picture.
Yes, I remember seeing that. Yeah.
So they're saying the Christians that are being persecuted are not going to be let into this country. They're only letting in the Muslims. Is this your understanding?
Well, certainly, yes. But, we've got a little bit of good news today, Bob. I've just done my latest story that Pastor Saeed Abedini has been freed.
Yes.
This is all a bit of a shock. So many people think, well, we can't do anything with these people when they get arrested, but we can pray. And I know literally millions of Christians around the world were praying for Pastor Saeed. He was arrested and charged with sort of anti-Muslim activities. He was one of the leaders of the house churches in Iran, and then he met Nagma, his wife. She'd come over. She visited the main Assemblies of God Church in Tehran, fell in love with him. They got married, moved to the U.S., and he got ordained by Calvary Chapel of Boise, Idaho, and got very much involved in life in America, but he just felt that he had to go back to Iran and say goodbye to many of his friends in the house church movement, and eventually they double-crossed him, the authorities. Surprise, surprise. They told him that maybe he should set up an orphanage for kids in Iran, and so he had gone back there. He crossed the border from Turkey, I believe, into Iran, got picked up by the secret police there, and got charged, and he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. He was in the Evin prison, which is one of the worst prisons in the world, and then was moved to another prison. He was badly tortured there. But a group called the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow's group, they have been representing him, and they released the news today that he was freed, and the days finally arrived. He spent more than 3 years in an Iranian prison, and Jay Sekulow said, we're grateful for the millions of people who have stood with us in our ongoing efforts, both in this country, to secure his release. We've worked and prayed that this day would finally arrive, and now Pastor Saeed can return home, and he's going to be coming home to his wife Nagma and the 2 kids.
Well, he's one of 4 American prisoners that are hostages. Do you think this is much like the scenario when the Iranians realized that Reagan was going to become president? They released the hostages from their invasion of the embassy, and the Iranians may be afraid that Trump or Ted Cruz are going to become president, and they take a very hard line against Iran. So do you think the fear of retaliation, a strong America that would cancel the agreement, not give them the $100 billion in order to build their nuclear missiles, do you think that fear played into this at all?
I think that was partly the truth, and also they're hoping to get the billions of dollars of frozen Iranian assets into there so they can carry on with their terror work. So, it's a sort of a no-win situation, really, for the U.S. because, they want to get these prisoners back, but of course we have to give them more people to be released than we
6.
got back.
Yeah, they're giving them 6
back. They want to get their hands on these frozen assets, and who knows what will happen once they get that money.
Well, I met with the Pope of the Iraqi Christian Church, the Nestorians, and met him in Chicago, and they said, well, you'll be meeting with His Holiness. It's traditional to go on one knee and kiss his ring. And I said, I'm a Calvinist. I don't kiss rings or asses. I said, but I certainly will be respectful. I got in the living room, and he jumped up, ran. He was a short fellow, and threw his arms around my chest and said, we have been waiting, Dr. Morey, for someone like you who had a good understanding of Islam. So I worked with the Iraqi Christians, the Pakistani Christians. I organized them a demonstration at the White House, the Pakistani embassy, set up a lobby group, got them in contact with Dan Coates, and Jesse Helms. And I was glad to see a little bit of progress, but everything has gone backwards since Obama took over. It's been an absolute disaster for Christendom in the Middle East. Under Obama, have you seen any willingness to even mention the thousands and hundreds of thousands of Christians that have lost their homes? They've had to immigrate in the so-called Palestine.
Well, you were talking about Pakistan there. We've been running a story, and maybe the listeners would pray for this lady called Asia Bibi. She's a 50-year-old mother of 5 in Pakistan. She was from a little village where the only way they could make a living was to go into the fields and pick berries. And some years ago, she joined a group of Muslim women who were also picking berries in the field, and it was pretty hot. And so they asked her if she wouldn't mind, which was about a mile away, bring them some water back. So she went there with a little cup to go with the, with the pail that she was going to get the water in. And partway back, she took one sip of water. And when she arrived back, apparently she was honest, and she told them that she was very thirsty. She had a sip of water. The next thing that happened, which was absolutely incredible, was they told her that she had defiled the water, that she was an infidel, and they got into quite a discussion about Muhammad and Jesus. And finally she said, look, she said, the person I follow, Jesus Christ, he's alive. The person you follow, Muhammad's dead. Well, that didn't go down too well, as you could imagine. Next thing we know, she's been beaten up. Her family have been beaten up. Her kids have been beaten up. And then they go to the local imam, I believe his name is, and they complain that she has committed blasphemy for standing up for Jesus and attacking Muhammad. She was then hauled before the courts and sentenced to death.
Is she still on death row?
Yeah, she's still on death row.
Amazing.
And the interesting news is that there has been such a protest against the way Asia Bibi has been treated that finally the Pakistan High Court has agreed to hear her appeal against the death sentence. Now, here's the problem. If she wins the appeal and tries to walk out of court, she could get assassinated.
Oh, yes.
In these places, they don't like people getting away with what they consider blasphemy. And so the mayor of Paris has invited her and the family to immediately get on a plane to France, and they will give her political asylum.
Oh, not America. I'm sure that
she just stood up for Jesus and is then sentenced to be hung.
Well, there was a young boy that they came to. This is around the age time a couple of years ago when we were on the radio together. And the Pakistanis came to me, and they said, this boy is on death row. He was asked at school, is Muhammad the Rasul, the apostle? And he said, no, Jesus is Lord. He was arrested. He was on death row, 9 years old. Wow. Now, all the protests and the prayers, and I said, well, there's only one thing that means anything to the Pakistanis. It's money. So I took a delegation to Dan Coates and Jesse Helms, and they arranged for a $17 million loss of foreign aid to the country of Pakistan in the light of the boy being on death. And when they heard that they were going to lose $17 million, the boy was released. But that's also when I was invited to the embassy. Yes. And the moment I stepped through the front door, 2 men stepped in front of me and took my picture. Wow. And later they were found to be the secret police, and the FBI said, well, here's the textbook from Islamabad, and my picture was there. Underneath it said, #1 enemy of Islam, Dr. Robert Morey. With my that was, and they told me, don't go to Pakistan. We know you got invited to preach. It's a ruse.
Yes.
When you get there, you will be tortured. So thankfully they sent me. But see, you got to remember that Muhammad, as I clearly document, was a liar. And he believed that you may lie in the interests of Islam. You may kill, you may rape, you may, if it is to promote Islam, whatever the outrage,
right,
do it. Now, as you look at the candidates, I know you don't want to publicly commit yourself. Do any of the Republican candidates for presidency have a proper understanding of the persecuted church today, and you think there may be a glimmer of hope that they will do something to support the Christians who are being persecuted?
Well, the only one who seems to have at least some idea is the neurosurgeon. He at least comes from a Christian background and seems to have quite an insight into it, but I'm not quite sure, really. They will say one thing and do another. But another country I wanted to mention, Bob, is North Korea. Like you've gone to some of these very weird countries. I once had the amazing privilege of being invited to North Korea to report there, and I spent over a week traveling throughout the country, including down to the DMZ, reporting every day for the UPI radio network in Washington, D.C., and it was the most incredible situation.
That's the most oppressive country there is, as far as I know.
I mean, they have just been voted for the 14th straight year by Open Doors World Watch list as the most difficult country to live as a Christian. It's the world's worst persecutor of Christians. But it was so interesting because we were a group of Christians that went in shortly after the death of Kim Il-sung, the dictator there, and we were led by a Korean pastor that actually knew Kim Il-sung's mother, and through that he became a friend of the dictator, and he said that near the end of his life, Kim Il-sung started to have dreams of his mother. His mother was a believer, and she used to teach him the Bible sitting on his lap. He would sit on her lap, and he would teach the Bible, and then he went to Moscow for training and became a Saul instead of a Paul. But near the end of his life, he started to make inquiries about Christianity, and sadly that's never been followed up by any of his sons or grandsons, but it was the most interesting time. There were four of us. We were all believers. One was Michael Little from CBN, Dr. David Cho, this Korean pastor that knew Kim Il-sung's mother, and a pastor from Chesapeake. And when we arrived there, this was the most amazing thing. We were greeted at the Pyongyang airport by North Korean TV, and they said to me, why have you come to North Korea? And I said, well, I'm a believer, and I would like the people of North Korea to know more about Jesus Christ. And I shared my personal testimony.
Now, did they translate that for you?
Yeah, and then, they did. And when I got back to the room at the hotel, when we finally arrived, I turned on the TV, and there I was giving my testimony with a Korean translation.
Unbelievable.
Shortly after this, one of my friends recommended to the North Koreans that they should invite a Christian like Billy Graham to come. And Billy Graham, I've had the privilege of working with Billy all over the world, and he was sharing with me that when he first arrived in Pyongyang, Kim Il-sung invited him into his office and said, Mr. Graham, tell me about Jesus. And Billy Graham started to witness to him. Then he went back a second time and was given live access for an hour to share the gospel on North Korean TV, again translated. And so I said to Billy, did Kim Il-sung eventually give his life to Jesus? And he said, well, I don't really know. But he said he'd invited me back one more time to go fishing with him. And it was that time I was going to just challenge him.
Well, see, Billy was already fishing.
So he said, I don't know whether he ever did or not, but we may be surprised who we meet up with in heaven.
Yeah, you never know. I just spent a month ago, 2 weeks in China, all the way from Beijing, hitting all the major Shanghai, Chengdu, all the way to Hong Kong. And I particularly wanted to survey university students.
Right.
Now, what I discovered, one, none of them believed in communism. None of them. Number two, they all wanted to become prosperous. And number three, nearly every one of them said, can you help me to immigrate to the United States?
Yeah.
I think the communists have lost this generation of Chinese young people.
I was told, initially, Bob, that many of the earlier Christians 20, 30 years ago were more the peasant class. But today, I understand many of the new believers are, as you've just said, university students, the intelligentsia, because they see communism is dead.
Well, in Beijing, the young lady, because I specifically asked, are there any Christian groups meeting at your university? She said, oh, yeah, there are many Christian groups meeting. I have never been. I said, you need to go. Her name is Mary. Pray for her.
Yes.
But there is such an openness to the gospel that is absolutely fabulous.
Yes.
Now, what would be the most important things for our audience to do to help you defend the persecuted church around the world?
Well, we'd like to offer to all the listeners a free subscription. People like things that are free, and there was a very famous Englishman once said, knowledge is power. And if you can get the knowledge of what is going on around the world, you can then have the power of prayer. And we've seen the power of prayer today with Saeed Abedini being released. We hope and pray that many people will continue to pray for Asia Bibi, and she will be released. So we're offering a free subscription where you can every day into your inbox get several stories, mainly about this particular topic, and then you can take it to the throne of grace in prayer. And so all you do is go to www.assistnews, one word, ASSISTNEWS.net, scroll down there, and you can sign up for free. And what we'd like people also to do is to start a prayer meeting for the persecuted church in their homes and in their churches, and use the material that we send you every day into your inbox. Use it to pray, and let's see God do a
matter of fact,
miracle.
I had suggested go to your pastor and say there should be a Sunday that is dedicated to the persecuted church.
Yes.
Now, those who wish more information, particularly about Islam, they need to read my book, Islamic Invasion, and how to win the war against radical Islam. These were really prophetic. I don't claim to be a prophet, but they certainly predicted the terrorism and everything we're doing. My own website is faithdefenders.com, faithdefenders.com, 1-800-41-TRUTH, 1-800-41-TRUTH. And we have been interviewing one of the most important soldiers in the army of Jesus Christ, who was seeking to set the captives free. And that is, of course, one of the things that Jesus came to do. And how can we as Christians in America, still relatively not persecuted, beyond ridicule and a few, they call us Jesus freaks or something, ignore the plight of Christians? We need to support them by prayer. We need to support them financially. I hope that in Assist, that you're able to guide people who want to give money to help persecuted Christians, so let's say the Syrian Christians. Where can they give money that it's not going to be stolen and used? Are there any trustworthy organizations? You need to go to his website in order to find out.
7 years with Brother Andrew, God's smuggler. He was the founder of Open Doors, and I'm a big fan of Open Doors, even though I don't work for them now. But I believe Open Doors, od.com.usa, I believe it is. But just do a Google search. They're a very excellent group, and they put out this World Watch list, which I find is very interesting, on the world's worst persecutors.
And I think it's important to understand the time may come in America when we will face such persecution. That's why it's important you're registered to vote, and you vote your conscience. You vote for those who believe in freedom, justice, and truth, the freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, these God-given rights given to us from the Creator himself. Well, Dan, thank you so much for being on the program.
Well, thank you. What a privilege to talk with you.
Yes, and you are listening to Tim and Jesus and Tim in Las Vegas. Go to the website, sign up for the newsletter. Understand that times are dark indeed, but Jesus is the light of the world. This is Dr. Bob Morey. God bless.